Our subject this evening is the Critical Areas Ordinance, and quite frankly, it is perhaps the largest overreach in government that you could possibly conceive. What we're trying to do with the Critical Areas Ordinance is basically remove every reason for a human being to live in Kitsap County, and it's true. Now, I know this is going to sound real funny. Before I do this, Mike Gustafson brought in all these wonderful maps of the county, and you need, before you leave, you need to come up and take a look at it, because the yellow on these maps, even though they're dated, that's all the buffers in Kitsap County that by the CAO you're not allowed to go into. What? You can't mean that? Yes, we do. Okay, so we all understand what this is about. These are property rights, guys. These aren't something that we dreamt up last week because we thought we'd want to raise hell with the county. Of interest, these are protected by the Constitution, both the state and the federal. And unfortunately, there isn't anybody in the DCD that understands one of them.
What is DCD?
DCD is the Department of Community Development. Okay. CAO, in fact, does have a position regarding critical areas, the environment, and whatever. There it is. It makes sense. Unfortunately, this thing about protecting the environment, the Constitution does not have the word environment in it. It's not there. The idea of community, of common good does not appear in the Constitution as a protected right, and there's no such thing as community rights. The only community rights that might exist are those which are delegated to government by the citizens. Remember, all power resides with the people. The whole concept of government is protection of individual rights. And if you don't do that, then you have no reason for government. So we all ought to be sitting here asking ourselves, why the hell do we have a government in this county? Okay, the next thing is the question, is the CAO required? And the answer is no. Absolutely, positively not. When you read the underlying document, which is the Growth Management Act, which we all love, you find out that the Growth Management Act requires regulation for taking care of things that are classified as critical. But it doesn't say you have to have a critical areas ordinance. You could have all of this stuff could just as easily be in the various building codes, and it would work just as well. Okay, what are critical areas? That's always a good question. Here they are. And the interesting part is these have some very, very unique definitions which you can find out about after you read through a bunch of references that are usually not available online. So if you're trying to do your research and your background study, you find out, okay, they tell me to go read reference A. I can't find reference A. It's not anywhere. But when you do find reference B, expect it to take you to reference C, D, E, and F, and none of them to make any sense. I spent a lot of time in the Navy. I understand how this works. If we cross-reference enough, we'll confuse everybody and do what we want to do. Here's a wetland. Gee, standing water, hydric soils. Dean Jenigas, Dean, raise your hand. Dean says it's a puddle on top of a piece of hardpan. That's a wetland, guys. In Kitsap County, if the water doesn't drain into the aquifer, that's a wetland. And what keeps the water from draining into the aquifer is hardpan, and it's a puddle. But the DCD experts tell you that, I'm sorry, there is this magic thing that happens. It's there so that the water is all filtered out, and it sort of runs off the edges and goes down into the aquifer. If that worked, there wouldn't be any water there. This is really amazing. Really, really amazing. Okay, let's see, we have areas with critical recharging effect. Since all of the water in the aquifers under Kitsap County gets there because of precipitation, that would mean that all of Kitsap County except the wetlands must in fact be critical recharge area. I don't understand. That means my house is sitting on top of something that's keeping me from getting water. I don't think so. I manage to get it out of the faucet every day. If you try and find a part of Kitsap County without wetlands, it's called Bangor, Keyport, PSNS, and a bunch of county buildings. We have fish and wildlife habitat areas, and we have pages of little creatures that we're going to protect. The unfortunate thing is none of those little creatures happens to reside in Kitsap County. But we're going to protect them anyway in Kitsap County just in case someday, perhaps maybe, they may wander through. Utter nonsense. Utter nonsense. By the way, Alan Beeman and Mike Gustafson are the guys who did the research on this one. And as Alan just pointed out, the creatures get to wander through on the wildlife corridors, those green areas between whatevers. And oh, by the way, in case you're interested, when you're eating salmon for dinner on Sunday, just remember that NOAA Fisheries told us that there are no indigenous salmon habitats in eastern Kitsap County, so you can feel okay about eating salmon.
And it's probably hatchery salmon.
It's probably hatchery salmon, that's right. Geologically hazardous areas. Finally, we've got something we ought to be concerned about. We really don't want to have an OSO in Kitsap County or in my backyard. And we ought to be worried about where things, if we have an earthquake, where there's a higher probability of destruction of property and loss of life. Okay, we can identify those things. I've always said the only thing better than having a lawyer, than being a lawyer is having one. I got one of those. And the only thing better than being a geologist is owning one. I own one of those too. So I'm in pretty good shape. Yeah, we ought to be doing this, but we ought to be doing this on a structure by structure basis, because that's what we're concerned with. Is the structure we're building safe? Not is the lot we're building the structure on safe, but is the structure safe? Once again, we don't need a CAO, and if we did what we wanted to do, if we did what was proper, we would have no CAO and we wouldn't be here, and instead we could be home watching, I don't know, Tucker Carlson or somebody, whoever's left on Fox. Then we have the dreaded buffer. It's not bad enough we have to have a critical area. We have to surround the critical area with a buffer. And it's the Maginot Line, man. It's going to keep critical areas safe. What the buffer really does is keep human beings at least 50 and up to 300 feet away from the edge of a critical area. Now, Mike has pointed out, Dean has pointed out a number of times that how you determine if you're in a wetland is listen to the squishing under your feet. Not for the county. You're going to have a buffer, and it's going to have signs all around it. We don't know what the signs are supposed to say. We don't know how often you have to put them in there, but you're supposed to have signs. And oh, by the way, you're responsible to keep the signs up for perpetuity. That means forever. You, the next owner, the next owner, the next owner. When the world comes to an end, the only thing that's going to be left is cockroaches and buffer signs.
And Democrats.
They're going first. Oh, by the way, and the county's having a real hard problem with this. They don't like reading legal findings from court and growth management hearings, board cases. Instead, they sort of ignore them because they get in the way. There is in fact a Supreme Court decision in the case of the Swinomish tribe that says riparian buffers are not required. And a riparian buffer basically is one that's alongside of water. That sounds like streams and wetlands and stuff like that.
Waterfront.
Yeah, waterfront property, all those neat things. You don't need a buffer. So the county's answer, we'll have buffers. Where does the most pollution come from that gets into streams? Gee whiz, look at that. It's not out of my backyard or yours. There it is. And you know, there's this thing about, oh, the property owners are destroying the world with chemicals and pesticides. The last time I checked, I went down to Home Depot today and got some Roundup. And you know, I figure if I can buy Roundup off the shelf, the EPA has said it's okay, and it's not going to destroy the world. Apparently the guys in DCD don't know how to read hazardous material data sheets. It's not surprising they don't know how to read very much of anything. We need to do a little bit of mathematics. This is another skill that has evaded the children down in DCD. They don't understand this concept of area and diameter of circles or areas. And I'm here to tell you it makes a difference. It does indeed make a difference. Okay, let's see. This is a place called CenturyLink Field. Go Hawks. Everybody knows where that's at? Okay. How about if we put a small buffer on top of CenturyLink Field? This is a nominal buffer on a wetland that is 100 feet in radius with a 200-foot buffer. That's a mere 300-foot radius circle, and it's only, are you ready, 6.9 acres. So go Hawks, go somewhere else, and oh, by the way, you can't even sit in the stands. Functions and values. We are protecting wetlands and other things because we want to protect their functions and values. Unfortunately, we fail to identify what are functions and values. And when we do identify them, it's not uncommon that we use words that have common usage, but unique usage for CAO. For example, most of us in the property rights business understand compensation to mean what government pays you when they take your property. In the CAO, compensation means what you give the government if you want to walk into a buffer. Somehow I missed that one. It got by me. There is no baseline for values, although it is required by law. There is absolutely no system to monitor how we're doing. So the CAO just sits there like Dormant Gookham saying, this is really good, it must be working because we wrote it. And there's no way to identify what's to be protected. Michael's maps are nice, but until such time as a permit is applied for, the county doesn't have the slightest idea where a critical area exists on that property, or if one does exist. So the first thing you do when you apply for a permit is get told you need to have a study done to determine if you have a critical area on your property. I beg your pardon? How does this work? Love it. And we talk about best available science, and most of the best available science that the state has is written to be applicable to someplace other than the state of Washington, and certainly other than Kitsap County. Little or none of it applies to Kitsap County, but we apply it nonetheless. During the last time around, we were using the science that was appropriate for the eastern shore of Maryland as our guidance on how to do things here in Kitsap County. And folks, I gotta tell you, I've lived on the eastern shore of Maryland in Kitsap County. Here's the guy that kills us. This is the one that snuck up, and the children just decided this was great. This is called Notice the Title. If you have a critical area on your property, in order to get a permit to do anything, you must agree to a permanent Notice the Title that identifies the restrictions on that property. Think about it. Think about trying to sell that piece of property sometime in the future. Even more difficult, think about trying to explain to your local realtor or a potential buyer what that really means. Almost impossible to do that. Almost impossible. And oh, by the way, if the rules change, there's no way to take the notice of title off. Just not provided for. And it does, in fact, take away every right that a property owner has for that portion of the property covered by the notice of title. And that notice of title is decided by a high school graduate who works in DCD. Danger trees. This is an interesting aspect of why this thing is so wrong. In the first place, danger trees are not mentioned in the Growth Management Act as being critical. In fact, danger trees apply to forestry practices, and they apply such that if in fact you are working in the forest and you see a tree that poses a hazard to your workers or your equipment, you are required to take it down. And you don't need a permit. That's correct. If you're a forester and you're working out in the forest, cutting timber, and there's a tree out there that could in fact injure people, you're required to take the damn thing down to keep it from hurting people.
But the wildlife people come up and say, that's a woodpecker tree.
Doesn't matter at all. That's what the law says. However,
You're absolutely
out at
right.
my house, if the tree's gonna fall on my roof or my neighbor's, I have to get an arborist to come out and tell me the tree is gonna fall on my house or my neighbor's house, and then I have to go get a permit to take the tree down. Wait a minute, not notice the title yet. Then the next thing I have to do is hire a professional tree guy to come out and take the tree down, and then everything that comes down has to stay on the property in place, and oh, by the way, I am probably gonna be required to replant.
So what's it cost?
No, hey, it doesn't cost anything.
Right.
Doesn't cost a cent.
It's grant money.
No, the county did not pay a single penny, so it can't cost anything. And when you talk to them about it, the answer is quite frankly, so what? We make the rules, just abide them. Okay,
Jack,
yes.
there is another element to this, and that is when the tree falls down, crushes your neighbor's house,
Yes.
roof, you pay for it.
Yes, through your
I
insurance
like also
policy.
say when the tree falls down, it's on county property, and it strikes somebody's car, the county pays for it.
The county ought to pay for it ought to be liable when they will not let you take a tree down and it falls. They ought to be, but they're not. Okay, so we're saying, this is great, I don't have to worry about it. I'm not gonna develop my property, it's already done, I got my house, I'm happy. Wait a minute, hang on there. Don't get ahead of yourself. You think you might have to re-roof that little villa sometime? You think your wife might say to you, I'd really like to remodel the kitchen or the bathroom? Or perchance, you're gonna have to repave the driveway. Guess what? Permit. And with the permit comes the horde. Here they come, the traveling horde, who are gonna come and tell you that it would be okay to put your driveway there, except now that's a critical area and you can't do it. I love it. I love it. There is no escaping this. Then there are the reports. You cannot believe how wonderful this is. And oh, by the way, we asked a very specific question yesterday. How many people in the county are wetland specialists, geotechnical specialists, geologists, hydrologists, or wildlife specialists? The answer was none. But not to be confused, these are but a few of the little reports that may be and probably will be required if you want to develop a piece of property. None of these are cheap. You have to hire a certified licensed professional to prepare each one of these. It will be reviewed by a high school graduate who has the right.
What happens if he doesn't like it?
Well, if the high school graduate doesn't like it, he says, I'm sorry, that's no good, do it again. And do it again and do it again. What they have missed, of course, is that when I contract with a licensed professional to write a report for me, we have a contract, and that licensed professional is by privy of contract liable for the final product. So when the county says, I'm sorry, that's no good,
Is the county liable?
no, wait for it. Wait, don't get ahead of yourself. When the county says that's no good, of course, they could be sued, but they won't, because their answer is, not a problem. If we need to have a equally qualified individual to review your report, we'll get one. And you'll pay for it. I beg your pardon. You guys think I'm making this up? I know you do.
You're not.
No.
You're right on the money.
This is a Bill Maher comedy hour. Okay, anybody here is not upset yet? If you're not upset, you're in the wrong place. Happy hour's out there. I gotta tell you, doing this and going and talking to these people about it is enough to drive you over the edge. It's crazy.
Mr. Hamilton?
Yes.
Is this still America that I...
No, it's not. This is Kitsap County. There is a difference. And you'll notice when we get this ordinance up, the next thing that happens is a gate goes up just this side of Belfair and on Highway 16 and on this side of the Hood Canal with big signs that say, sorry, we're closed for business. What's changed in the last 12 years? We did this in 2005 and we thought at that stage of the game, oh Lord, nothing can be as stupid as this. Yes, it is. It's worse. There are some things. Mike Gustafson has done the research. There are at least 12 different Growth Management Hearings Board or Supreme Court findings that should be applied to the various provisions within this document. The answer from DCD is, what? Supreme, what? Court? What? Findings? Nah. Now, we're listening to the Department of Ecology. They'll tell us what to do. That works out well. In 2005, when we determined that the commissioners who were approving the CAO hadn't read it before they adopted it, we did get a verbal agreement from two of the serving commissioners that we would in fact establish a baseline for critical areas and a monitoring program so that we could determine whether or not we were making any progress in saving all of those little creatures and wetlands and all those other things. Well, unfortunately, that never happened. And there is no data collected between 2005 and today to tell us whether or not what we did 12 years ago made any difference. It doesn't matter. Because we wrote the ordinance, we knew it was good, we knew it had to work, and it would be okay. By the way, a baseline is in fact required by law. It makes sense. If you're going to protect something, first you need to know what you're protecting, and second you need to know how you're doing protecting it. We've lost that one. The species come on and off the list. Most of the time they come on, seldom go off, but the eagles, okay? The bald eagle came off the list. I mean, the EPA said it's not an endangered or threatened species anymore. You just can't own eagle feathers, and you can't transport eagles. I'm not sure who would want to transport an eagle. That doesn't sound like a lot of fun. But that doesn't matter. We are still talking about eagles in the CAO.
600.
And it's 600 feet around an eagle's nest that you're not supposed to disturb. Okay, I'm not sure what the acreage on that is, but it's a hell of a lot bigger than my property. We do have some interest in the people who work in DCD. One of the guys who was here and was a prime leader in the effort to build a 2005 edition of the CAO. Once it was adopted, he saw that that wasn't going to be very beneficial to him personally, so he packed up and left. However, somebody in the central planning network told him we were writing another one, so he came back and he got rehired, and he's here helping us again. That kind of help we don't need. Now, we may have one commissioner who is willing to listen to us, and Bill talked to him before. Ed Wolf is showing significant interest in understanding what we're talking about and the points we're trying to make. He also happens to understand he is but one commissioner, And he also happens to be a lawyer, so he knows what's possible and not what's not possible. However, it is a major improvement to have a commissioner who is inviting us to come talk to them about this, listening and working. And by God, when he's up for election, we need to support him. Okay, what are we trying to accomplish? Now, we had a short gathering here before this dinner started, and the bottom line is there's a cadre of people who are spending a fair amount of time and a significant amount of energy to try and better understand what this ordinance is all about and identify where the failures in this thing are to the county to the best of our ability. All of that's wonderful, but it's meaningless if in fact we don't have the ability to follow through. And quite frankly, we got to convince 2 out of 3 commissioners that what we're saying is true and it makes a difference. And that effectively means that Commissioner Gelder has to be brought on board. He has been semi-receptive to us, hard to read, but semi-receptive. It would be well worthwhile to deluge his office with emails and letters saying, hey, I'm concerned about this thing, and I think we need to step back and take a hard look. We got about a 50% chance of convincing them that the CAO is not required. Not a very good chance, quite frankly. We have a 50% chance of convincing the 2 of them to simply re-adopt the 2005 ordinance and then go to work on an actual meaningful critical areas ordinance or set of building code regulations that would do what's supposed to be done. Commissioner Wolf basically told us it's probably not going to happen. They are probably going to adopt this thing, and then we have to go from there. And if we want any kind of agreement about what we will do after adoption, we got to get it in writing. This is getting hard. It's getting really hard. However, what we are doing now, we learned a big lesson in 2005, is we are establishing positive standing for a lawsuit to challenge this thing in the court system after all is said and done. Look, quite frankly, I'm not the least bit interested in trying to determine, I love it, in trying to determine if a 35-foot buffer is better than a 15-foot buffer. All I see is a buffer is a taking. And anytime the government wants my property, they need to pay me for it. So the approach that I think we'll probably wind up with is to go into the court system using takings as our vehicle to argue this thing. All right, what do we do? If you're sitting on your couch at home and thinking this is all going to be handled and this is all going to work, get off your couch. It ain't going to happen. Unless we can get people in really invigorated and participating in this effort, it is going to fail. You have neighbors. You have neighbors. Get your neighbors involved in this process. This is one of, it's often said that people don't pay attention until they're gored, their ox is gored or whatever. I'm here to tell you they're being gored whether they like it or not. And they need to know it and they need to be involved. Do your homework. If you do not have a copy of the U.S. Constitution, is there anybody here who does not have a copy of the U.S. Constitution? Anybody here that doesn't read it at least once a year? Anybody here does not have a copy of the state constitution? Go get one. Available online. Just go to washington.gov and you can find the state constitution. And become very familiar with Article 1. Article 1 is the essence of it all. Do you have your copy of the draft critical areas ordinance? You don't? Oh my golly, you better get one, because if you don't know what's in there, you don't know what they're doing to you. Don't believe me. Don't take my word for it. DCD doesn't. So why should you? Get a copy of your own and look that little level up. And the Growth Management Act. That's one of my favorite reading. I'll sit up evenings reading portions of the Growth Management Act. Golly, that's really wonderful. I sleep well at night when I read that sucker. But it's, you know, those bottom two are ruling our lives, and if you don't know what's in them, you're letting the government take advantage of you. Letters to the editor. If you're not right, look, the Sun has a policy that they'll take one a month. There are 40 people in this room. That's at least one every day. And write the same, you can write on the same subject every month, just over and over and over again. If you look at the progressives, that's what they do. They keep telling me Donald Trump's a liar, and he's a puppet of the Russians, and they're really, really bad. And all the letters are exactly the same, but they all get published. So we can do the same thing. Correct Layers Ordinance is a bane to humanity. It's going to mean everybody has to move out of Kitsap County. We're all going to lose our property. No. Use a little common sense and write a good letter and send it in. If you need help writing a letter, please let me know. greativer@wavecable.com. I will help you write that letter. I don't have much success in letters except in the Wall Street Journal, simply because they don't limit me to one a month. Public meetings. Jackie put a little flyer out on your cable to go to public meetings. In 2005, we held a meeting. There was a meeting held with the commissioners at President's Hall. And we had the Nature Conservancy brought in a whole bunch of people from all over the state to sit on one side of the audience and go up and one after another say exactly the same thing. We need to save the salmon. We need to save the salmon. Let's go hug a tree. One after another, after another, after another. And here come the cable guys saying, guys, this thing is nuts. It doesn't make any sense. Who do you think they listened to? Yeah, the salmon guys. Even though the salmon guys were dead wrong and they knew it. They listened to them. We need to go, we need to be present. If you're afraid to get up and talk in front of people, come let me help you learn how to do that. It is really, really simple. You just look at them and say, hey, you're younger than I am. You're a child. Let me tell you how this really works. Because they are. And it's neat. As I said before, talk to your neighbors. You really do. I mean, this is a whole new way to start community development. We can actually go find our neighbors and talk to them. If you don't know who your neighbors are, go find them. What a unique idea. Okay, what's probable? Can you say litigation? Yes. No matter what happens, we know that this thing is going to get passed. So we got two options: live with it or continue to fight. Well, we've laid the groundwork and spent the energy to continue the fight. So if we give up now, shame on us, we might as well close CAO down and go home, because there'd be no purpose in life for this organization. To stand up and object and then to retreat when faced with a severe crisis is dumber than dirt. So what are we looking at? We're looking at a lawyer. Lawyers cost money. Believe me, I have one, and she tells me how much she doesn't make, because she's always asking me, Dad, can you give me a... But she's making money, and the guys in land use, they make a hell of a lot more. We know, we've paid a lot of them. We're gonna have to pay some court fees. You gotta pay to file. There'll be some need for money, like lots of money. The last time we did this, CAO raised $100,000 to go through the Growth Management Hearings Board. The lesson learned was don't do that. Don't go through the Growth Management Hearings Board. You don't have to. Because neither the hearing examiner nor the Growth Management Hearings Board have any authority to hear or decide anything regarding takings. You make your lawsuits based on takings and go directly to Superior Court, knowing full well that you're probably not going to win in Superior Court, but even if you do, the county will immediately appeal to the state Supreme Court. And that's fine, because we've got this guy sitting over here in the corner, and he was here about 3 months ago talking to us, a guy by the name of Brian Hodges, works for the Pacific Legal Foundation. They salivate every time we start getting hot and bothered about ordinances, and they just love taking this kind of case to the Supreme Court. It doesn't mean it'll be cheap, but we still got to get there.